Hi, my name's Justin Johnson.
And I'm Josiah Stowe.
And we are Dominion Wealth Strategists. We are created to put money in the hands of those that are sitting in the pews.
From budgeting to estate planning, savings accounts, retirement planning, life insurance, and a heck of a lot more here at Dominion.
That means that you are leaving an inheritance that passes multiple generations because that is the legacy. It's part of our mission.
All of Christ for all of life.
And all of finance for Christendom.
Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts now. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Moore. You can find out more about us at DMWpodcast.com. Support the show. Find us on socials. Heck, pick up one of these fun mugs. Wine 'em, dine 'em, Romans 9 'em. Always a good conversation starter for that morning coffee. And, of course, the new T-shirts that are dropping by Kiefer Likens next week with some new designs that I think you guys are really going to like. We're going to put those up on the website, too. We're doing a collab with him. And then the new shirt is, of course, Job 13:5. How about you shut up and let that be your wisdom? Sometimes you just got to quote scripture to the pagans. So with that being said, we got the business out of the way. Don't want to belabor my personal week. Just got back from camping for 6 days with our church. We take over 100 spots up in northern Michigan. It was awesome, but we're not going to talk about that today. We've got a special guest on, his second time on the podcast. I think it's been over a year since he's been on. I really, in the first episode, I said multiple times, I really enjoy what he posts on social media, the books he's written, just his view and take. There are a few guys out there, a lot of guys out there that say the exact same thing. There's a few guys out there that have unique perspectives, and J. Chase Davis is one of those. He's the lead pastor of the Well Church in Boulder, Colorado, two-time graduate of Denver Seminary, author of Trinitarian Formation, a Theology of Discipline in Light of the Father, Son, and Spirit. And he hosts the podcast, Proof Theology. And if you're listening or watching right now, pause, go subscribe to that, do yourself a favor, come back, listen to the rest of this episode because we want to support him and what he's doing. But J. Chase Davis. Chase, how you doing, brother? Thanks for coming back.
Doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me back on. It's
been a while since you've been on. What's been going on in your life for the last year or so?
Oh, lots. Got a baby, blessed by the Lord with a new daughter with this time a couple years ago. And so she's in her terrible twos, which is an adventure. And I don't know when the last time I was on exactly, but our church moved into our church building, which is great.
Nice.
And so, yeah, it feels like ever since 2020, it just feels like it's kind of been crazy, with both personal reformation in terms of, growth and maturity and who I'm listening to, who I'm not listening to anymore, but also just our church, as we grow, as there's pruning, as there's addition, new faces, our family. And so, 2025 isn't shaping up to be much different. I've been speaking a little bit more, both in the political realm, on podcasts, at conferences, and I've got a new book coming out hopefully this year. If I gotta, after we're done recording, I got to get back to work on it. But it's going to be a book on masculinity, which, when I first was approached to write this book, I was kind of okay, hasn't that topic already been written about plenty thus far? But my approach is going to be a bit different. It's going to be more focused on theological anthropology and the unity of our bodies and souls, and how our bodies impact our spiritual formation in terms of masculinity. And so that's kind of the approach I'm taking with the book. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. You'll have to come back and when it releases so we can promote that for you. Yeah, that is a good take on it, because I know Foster has kind of become the king of masculinity over the last few years with his book, It's Good to Be a Man. But taking that anthropology approach, that theological approach, which has had some of that in there, I'm not taking away from that, but it was really more practical and pragmatic kind of. So I'd be interested to definitely read that, and I'll pick it up when it comes out. So keep us posted on that when it does come up. So last time you were on, I do remember, this just jumped into my head as you were talking. I remember we discussed a little bit of like the political landscape out in Colorado in the Denver area, your church and stuff. And I remember getting a lot of comments from people in the Midwest. I'm in Michigan, so I got a lot of listeners in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and they just went, we don't even know that about another state that far away. And it made me really realize that Americans are kind of, they go about to the state level. Maybe they dabble in a little bit of federal politics or national politics, but they don't understand the diversity of political makeups in different states. And I just wanted to tell you that we did get good feedback on that. And they said, very interesting. It's cool to hear from someone in a different state doing that, kind of talking about that. But on this episode, we kind of want to do a news flash. This will be coming out within 24 hours of us recording it. So I want to do some stuff that was kind of in the news and just get your take on it, maybe discuss it a little bit, chop it up, and just see where it goes. The biggest thing in the news right now, well, there's so many things, but the Vance Boelter situation with this, I guess they're calling him an assassin, right? A murderer on the run who was just captured. And it is crazy now in the internet, social media world, how many differing stories you can get, not only from mainstream, but just your other sources, X, TikTok, Facebook, all these different places, New Legacy media, things like that. And it almost, I think the disinformation in the flood of information, tell me what you think about this, Chase. Sometimes I think it's aimed to just tune people out, because I'm a very curious person. I research a lot of things. I love knowing the ultimate truth of a matter, right? But even me, I go, geez, there's just so much stuff to wade through here. I've got a family. I own a business. I got things to do. I'm not going to spend 8 hours trying to figure out what the actual truth is on things. But have you been following this at all? Or, what are your thoughts on this, on a guy who takes out some state legislatures, goes on the run, and, apparently, I mean, the living situation, the political alignment, all that stuff we can discuss, but pretty bizarre situation, don't you think?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I was busy last week at a couple conferences, and so wasn't as in touch with it, but I did see the same thing you saw. Both left, right, and everyone in the middle was trying to understand, what narrative is being constructed. And I think that's important in our day, is what you talked about, and kind of the flood of information is the propaganda continues, and people are always trying to twist information and use information to advance a certain agenda. This is classic news media today, is they're just kind of propaganda uh, arms of various factions and wings. I mean, what the guy did was horrific.
Mhm.
It's not to be celebrated at all. It's the same thing that that villain, Luigi, when he murdered in cold blood that CEO. It's the same kind of violence we as Christians condemn. And
Yeah.
so, I've talked with a couple pastors there locally. It's obviously a very tragic thing that's happened. It's very confusing. Apparently, the police were there at the second house when he went in, and they didn't stop him. And so a lot of people were, ragging on the police. So yeah, just a lot of information coming out. The guy is not just unwell. I think it's easy to go, well, this is just somebody who's mentally not there. He's a sinner, and of course, as all sinners are called, that he should repent of his sins. Now, in this life, I hope they, bring him to justice. It sounds like they've captured him, and he should be, he should face justice and consequences for his actions in this life. But I do hope that he, uh, finds Christ. There's reports coming out that he was preaching in various places. It very much seemed like a performance, and it is hard to discern the facts. Apparently, there was some kind of manifesto and that kind of thing. But as Christians, we want to be sober minded, and this kind of stuff is not stuff we encourage, that we want. Um, and so we live in very troubled times where
Yeah.
people feel desperate to take action on their own, and that's not the first step at all. And in places like California, Portland, Colorado, Minnesota, there's a lot of temptation to violence, you might say, mainly on the left. You see them indulging in that temptation through rioting and that kind of thing. And I don't know where this guy lined up. It seemed like he was appointed by Governor Waltz at one point. So yeah, like you said, the propaganda is very strong with this one, and it's very hard to tell. But we as Christians can obviously say, look, he should be prosecuted, and there should be justice served upon him. And as a minister, you would hope that somebody would share the good news of Jesus Christ with him.
Yeah, no, I think that's the takeaway. I had a conversation with a friend earlier today, actually, this morning about it. And, because I think it's so important for the culture, the mainstream news, whoever's trying to form that narrative, to really nail down, like you said, kind of an origin story, a narrative in those first 24 hours, right? So in those first 24, 48 hours, you see so many things coming. Oh, he was registered as a Republican in 22. Oh, but he had no Kings flyers in his bag. Oh, he was appointed by Tim Walz and he donated to Democrats all the time. And, people start digging up these things. And then you see clips of him preaching in Africa. And, oh, no, he was a conservative Christian, right? They're trying to pin politically is what it is one side or another. All Christians are bad and conservative, and all liberals are horrible and progressive, and they're Democrats. And I think what you just said is the right way to go. And it's what I told my friend too. I said, yeah, we should not be shaded by tribalism, by, oh, I'm on this side politically, that side politically, that side's so bad, I need them to look bad and take this guy as one of their own. No matter where he lined up on the spectrum politically, we speak out against injustice, we speak out against sin, we speak out against murder, right? And we say, yeah, he needs to be held accountable. I would say anyone who is walking with the Lord, has been truly saved, regenerated, is not going to assassinate people. That's my thought. But I do have to admit, I have kind of like I don't want to say secret, it's public, but I don't post anything to TikTok. I think it's trash, but I'll go on there just to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist, So of course I go on there and I type in his name, and this gentleman who, look at, I don't know how you feel about this, Chase, but I kind of pride myself in having discernment. I read a lot of the wisdom books. I think it's very important. I think discernment is not the difference between right and wrong, but right and almost right. And it served me well in business and sales and owning my own business, of kind of reading between the lines when people say something and your ears perk up and you go, well, that doesn't seem right. There's something more there. They're not saying this, or they're saying this too much. And when I first saw this interview with the shooter's roommate, which is insane in and of itself, right? He's married, he has kids, he's got multiple cars, he's a CEO of a non-government company. He's doing pretty well financially. It looks like someone got a hold of his tax returns, yet he's living in a house with like 2 or 3 other middle-aged dudes, and just go, okay, something's weird there. And this guy comes out and he's his roommate and he reads a text. And I just want to show you this video clip. It's about 1.5 minutes, about 90 seconds. But this guy, I think his name's Carlson something, I don't know, on TikTok, but he hits it just perfect. So listen to this audio if you're listening, watch if you're watching
I've ever seen. This is the suspect's best friend and roommate reading a text from him that he sent allegedly at 6:17 a.m.
I love you guys. I made some choices and you guys don't know anything about this.
You guys don't know anything about this.
But I'm going to be gone for a while. Sorry.
Notice his shirt? Shout out Papa John's. Yeah.
I don't want to say anything more and implicate you in any way, because you guys don't know anything about this.
Wait, he said twice in the same text, you don't know anything about this? You're not implicated. You didn't know anything. You're not implicated. You didn't know anything. All right, bro. We get it. We get it, bro.
But I love you guys, and I'm sorry for all the trouble this has caused.
Then one journalist doesn't quite believe his story.
Is there a photo of your phone screen left?
Yeah, I just don't want Jenny seeing it splashed on the.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't run it big, but I mean, just,
Yeah, it's all right. I read it. That's
okay. That's
more
fair.
than I would.
This is the best part. This is the best part of the whole video. Wait for it.
Sorry, I just got over here. What did the text say? Good, you missed it. I can't read it again. It takes too much out of me.
Look how nervous he is here. Look at his body language here.
I wish I could have been there. Stop me.
Does that guy not know way more than he is saying?
Okay, so yeah, I'm not going to get into conspiracy, but I watched the original without that commentary on it, and I was thinking along the same lines. I went, "There's something going on here. I've never heard a text like that. You know, you don't know anything. You don't know anything." And then he can't show you the text. He can't read it because it just takes too much out of him. And I'm not trying to fuel things here, but I go, okay, this guy is obviously there's something going on here, right? Like, I swear I don't know anything. I have an imaginary text that he sent me, which now that's been taken down. Obviously, it lives on forever on TikTok and the social medias, and he's no longer talking to media after that. And I just go, Now, here's the thing that I think that happens most of the time. Most conspiracy theories from people that are, witnesses to things, 99% of the time, they just want to be they want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want some notoriety. We're all chasing clout. And I think that might be what's going on with this gentleman here. Like, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to be the star of the show and be the good guy. And there's some other things in the video too, where he says, oh, he loved God and he would hate it if you called him a Democrat. And he made sure to let you know where he stood politically too. And I wondered if that motivated it a little bit, but did you see that clip at all? Or is that the first time seeing it, Chase?
No, that's the first time seeing it. I typically avoid. I appreciate your reconnaissance work on TikTok, but I typically try to avoid Chinese spyware. And so, yeah, I don't. I haven't seen that, but yeah, I mean, we see this all the time. I mean, the media is going to try to find anyone and everyone, dig up any dirt on anyone, in order to cast an error. But yeah, that's very odd behavior. Odd. I've even seen videos in the past of like people who are quote unquote experts in body language, whether it's with a presidential speech or something like that. I don't know. People are incredibly complicated and sinister. And that's what I come back to biblically is we don't know that man, that very, very large man. We don't know why he was connected. We don't know where that text came. There's just so much we don't know. What we do know is that the guy was found, arrested, he'll be tried. And like I said, I hope a minister is there to point him to how he has sinned. And I think that's important. I think many Christians today, they just focus on the crimes that were committed and they rest more on the civil crimes and the civil penalties as kind of the ultimate end or the ultimate means of discernment. Like you talked about with wisdom, we need to be discerning people. And one of those means of discernment is going back to God's law. At the end of the day, this man committed murder and, he violated God's law.
Allegedly. Yeah.
Allegedly. And so we need to be clear about the sin, and that man needs to be confronted in his sin and he needs to repent of his sin or else. And a minister needs to be there to communicate such facts. So yeah, a lot of this stuff, it's just like you said, it's a lot. You can go down, and it's funny what will get kind of your attention online too, because you can get down all sorts of rabbit holes on either various conspiracies or just stories that you find fascinating. And so it's easy to kind of get sucked into the vortex of all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I've never seen that video, but very, very interesting and suspicious, I will say.
Yeah, that's about as far as I've gone into a story in the last 2 or 3 years. And I've talked about it on the podcast here before. I was a legislative aide at our state capitol. I'm a locally elected official. I was running the local party. I mean, and I was on the news. I'm not kidding you, Chase. 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was on the news cycle 10 hours a day. And I thought I was fighting the good fight. I'm like, well, if I stand up for truth and I post things and I argue with people, right? And like a ton of bricks, the Lord dropped on me. Well, you just have an idol in your life, and you're clothing it as like some type of justice or righteousness, right? Like when I would get stressed out, or when I would be bored, or when I wanted some entertainment, I'd go to the news feed. I wasn't turning to Christ. I wasn't turning to my Bible, to prayer. I wasn't leading my family correctly. They were younger, and I really had to take a step back. I mean, a big step back to the place to where people kind of knew me as the guy that knew what was going on. They would call me. I have people that I've, stopped going to, we changed churches, and it's 10 years later, and they text me, "Hey, Greg, what's your take on this? What's going on here? Have you heard this?" And I had to tell them, I'm not in the cycle anymore. I don't know. And I'll tell you what, Chase, it was one of the most refreshing things I'd ever done. Not only did my relationship with God strengthen, my wife, my kids, I was just a happier person. I was more joyful, because you step outside of that news cycle bubble of fear and depravity. And yes, we know we're all depraved, and this is a fallen world. And I'm not saying, that it's not that. I'm saying what your heart focuses on, right? Like, it really can change your countenance. And so I like I said, that's probably the farthest I've went into a story. I'll read a headline, I'll look at it, man, we have much more important things to do as representatives of Christ here on earth than to argue conspiracy theories and post TikTok videos back and forth. But I just found that one more entertaining than anything. Oh, you missed it. He starts laughing. Your buddy that lives with you just killed a bunch of people, and you're chuckling because you can't read the text again. Anyway, let's move on. This one I'm interested in your take. War with Iran, pending war with Iran, right? This is like, if you're my age, I just grew up with Middle East banter. Middle East was always in turmoil. I was born in 1981. I'm 43. I think that's right. I'm so old, I forget how old I am. But yeah, in the 80s and 90s, for those of you listening who are younger, it was like hardcore, like, you just support Israel at no cost. This trend of like isolationists and like, we shouldn't be supporting Israel fully, that's rather new in the mainstream. Like, even the mainstream, both parties, Democrats and Republicans, like at the federal level, like, you give Israel what they need. The other guys are horrible guys. We got to stop them. So now we're in another precipice where we might be going to war with Iran, or at least bombing them, which I believe is war, right? Obama started the boots on the ground doctrine, which means he doesn't have to go to Congress for the war powers, because, hey, we don't have boots on the ground. We're just dropping bombs from drones and killing hundreds of thousands of insurgents and civilians. So, hey, that usurps that constitutional law. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump uses that same tactic. And anytime any president gets into power, they use whatever they can to usurp someone, authorizing what they want to do. And I disagree with it when Obama does it and when Trump does it, or whoever else. But we have this impending possibly war or bomb or whatever. But now we have to deal with a contingency of the mainstream that says, hey, we need to re-examine who we are supporting, which is something Ross Perot in the 90s was talking about. Ron Paul in the early 2000s was talking about. His son, Senator Rand Paul, who's more of a, hey, we shouldn't be supporting other countries militarily just to support them. They're not very big geopolitical guys. What is your take on that when you're looking at a president who ran on no more wars, but also Iran possibly having nuclear bombs? And they've said outright, their leaders, when we get nukes, America is number one on the list, or number two right after Israel. Do we have a duty as a country to be preemptive? What are your thoughts on that? It's such a complicated situation.
It is a complicated situation, and as a pastor, I'm not an expert in geopolitics. I'm hoping to have some people on my podcast to help me.
Yeah.
So apologies, you're getting the B team here. But, as Christians, I think it's important to talk about, as a pastor, these issues, because so many Christians are confused, both biblically but also politically, on what our relationship and duty is to other nations, like you mentioned. And I grew up in the same time period. I still remember 9/11, and I still remember that patriotic sentiment that kind of saturated the country, and I was very motivated to take justice against these people who had committed crimes against America and killed American citizens. And yet my personal appetite for kind of, going across the globe and sending many, many troops, many fellow citizens to go die in foreign wars, I will say it's pretty much gone for me.
Yeah.
I'm very disinterested in this. This is part of the reason I have supported and continue to support kind of Trump's position on no more foreign wars. It seems as if since, the middle of the 20th century, every time we go venture abroad, it does not go well for us in the end, whether it's in Vietnam or Desert Storm or, the war on terror, all this kind of stuff. I'm not a political expert or military expert, but for some reason, it just doesn't seem to be working out in our advantage. The same thing you see in the Middle East with the situation with Iran. So um, we've tried to do in both Syria and Libya and other places, Iraq, kind of regime change, whether it's like you mentioned, dropping bombs or boots on the ground, whatever it is. And every time we do that, it doesn't seem to produce the effects that we thought it would. And so you see a power vacuum created when we take out what we're told are kind of grave threats to either our democracy or freedom in the world or anything like that. And it ends up, and what ends up filling its place is oftentimes worse. And so you have these dictatorial regimes, and then ISIS comes after them or whatever it may be. And so, that's kind of my kind of political, opinion in terms of
Yeah.
my convictions and appetite for that. But as far as biblical, I think many Christians have been inundated with this idea that Israel today, as a nation state, is incredibly significant to our faith in a particular way. And that particular way is often informed by a dispensational uh, interpretation of either eschatology or just the biblical literature. And so there has been taught from many pulpits and many books and many movies this kind of idealized the people of Israel, the nation state today, is somehow God's chosen people, that we have to protect God's chosen people, and we should do that at all cost. And then you'll get pastors out there. I just saw a clip yesterday um, who was kind of talking about eschatology in a very dispensational way, saying, that the last war will happen in Israel, all this kind of stuff. And I don't think Christians have ever been offered alternatives. I don't know if they've ever been, shown biblically how there's different perspectives on this, how prior to the 20th century, it really wasn't, that significant. I mean, we could go back to the Crusades and why they felt it was necessary to defend against Islam. We could do that, but that had more to do with actually Jerusalem being a Christian place than it did with Israel as the nation state today. And so I think Christians need to be offered the alternatives of, what would it look like if our nation did not get involved in defending Israel in the same way that it has previously. Now, you could quibble about what involvement means because I don't trust the government. I still don't in terms of just like what we're being told, because the government does have a duty to they should at least kind of keep some of their plans secret in terms of if they're going to have a tactical advantage, they shouldn't necessarily be broadcasting all of their secret plans. But I've seen, rumors of aircraft carriers being moved into position, refueling tankers being flown over there. I saw something yesterday about some kind of a plane that's rarely deployed, and it's only deployed to test for nuclear activity. Um, Iran has also repeatedly said they don't want a nuclear weapon. Of course, they do these chants, "Death to Israel, death to America," all this kind of stuff. But they're on record saying that. Now, it's one thing if you believe them, but they've said that, and we know that Netanyahu has consistently kind of leveraged the American people to get them involved in various ways. He supported the regime change in Syria, in Iraq. And so I don't want Americans to be played by another country. I don't want our country to be duped into getting involved when we shouldn't. And so I will always have a kind of a patriotic sentiment. If we get involved, I support our country and I want the best for our country. I believe if we do get involved, and who knows what will happen in the next 24 hours before this is released or in the coming weeks. I think Trump's approach will be different. Hegseth's approach will be different than, Bush or Obama, which were actually very similar. I think it'll be more tactical. And there's cases to be made either way. But I think if we ground it, when Christians start grounding it too much in kind of a dispensational understanding, either of the end times, whether it's informed by Left Behind or other literature, that we get our souls in trouble and we get our theology in trouble. We get kind of our duties misplaced, and we misunderstand the role of the nation state of Israel today.
Yeah. No, the eschatology thing, and I didn't even really realize there were different thoughts on eschatology till my early 20s. Like, I grew up in churches where it was like, this is the way, there's nothing else. And it's kind of it kind of dominates the national landscape in the United States. This kind of 200-year-old kind of thought of rapture and dispensationalism, and Israel's the chosen one, and it's what the one generation is since Israel became a nation state after World War II, and we have, at all costs we must support Israel. And you step back, and I remember my early 20s thinking, it seems kind of hypocritical, because if we did that with any other nation, there's backlash from that. If you fully fund a nation to actually be a nation without the United States, let's say it was Taiwan or France or Norway, and without the funding of the United States, it would cease to be a nation. Well, then is that really a nation? I think Matt Walsh was saying something like this, and he said it better than I did. But I remember having that thought 20 years ago and going, so, Penn Jillette, who's an atheist, he's a libertarian, but he did say something that always stuck with me. Like, what good things should the government not do? Like, there is a list of things that, like, let's just do it all then. Like, where do we draw the line, right? And he was making the point of everything can be rationalized into, oh, well, this is for the greater good, therefore we should, put bodies towards it, money towards it, things like that. Now, we're in a time, Chase, where if you have any kind of doubts about supporting Israel, or you are critical of Israel, you are now in the neo-Nazi, stone choir. You're just a Christian nationalist, Nazi, racist, fascist. When in fact, I'd been talking with friends about, and I remember my father telling me when I was very young, yeah, absolutely, Israel has a right to exist and should exist, but it's not like Israel is innocent in everything. One of the most secular countries in the world. If you've ever visited there, it is insane how much they shake their fist at their version of who Yahweh is and want nothing to do with him, and very, very progressive and liberal and secular and pagan. And you just go, well, there's judgment on that, right? We've seen God judge nations for their attitudes towards him, not only in the Old Testament, but throughout history. So I've got this weird thing where politically, I have an idea, but then also biblically, I go, what is our duty there? And I think you just explained it very well. But I also saw Trump say something, and this is what burns me up. Tell me what you think about this. ABC and NBC report Trump. Oh, he's coming back from Canada on G7, from the G7. And he says he doesn't want a ceasefire. That was the headline. And I don't have the screenshot here, but you can go Google it. Trump doesn't want a ceasefire. What does that make you believe? If you read a headline that says, I don't want a ceasefire, that means you go, oh, Trump wants to go to war. Well, if you read the full quote, what he said, I don't want a ceasefire. I want better than a ceasefire. I want a full resolution of this peacefully. That's what they leave out, right? So that burns me up to where you go, you've still got the mainstream media spinning something to where they almost want war. They're purchased by the military industrial complex. Like, war is good business for news and for businesses who produce weapons and things like that. So it's this weird thing where we have to stay steady, even though we can see the game is loaded, right? The dice are loaded and not in our favor. We also have to call a spade, stand for justice no matter what. And even if it gets backlash from those within your Christian community, We have an entire generation that just believes, because of their eschatology, like you said, Chase, that Israel is untouchable. And I think it goes back to your greater point. Maybe we've created some of the hatred in the Middle East for America, right? Like when little kids are on video saying, oh, we only play when it's raining out or when it's cloudy. And the NPR journalist says, oh, you don't like sunny days. And they say, well, no, that's when the drones are out and we don't want to die. That's literally, you can go watch that video. 12-year-old kids playing soccer on a cloudy day because they know there's cloud cover from drones because, Obama killed 200,000 civilians in his drone attacks. No one ever talks about that. That's insane. That's an insane number. So maybe we have a little responsibility in what's been going on in the Middle East over the last 50 years as well, too, with us interjecting. And I think it's important for you as a pastor, too, when you have your members come to you and ask you these things, to basically, we have to stand on the Bible. We can't go with a political party. Am I correct in saying that? We have to stand on the justice and the word of the Bible.
Yeah, and we also have to be careful that we don't presume a level of insight and knowledge which we don't have access to, even though we're being encouraged to pretend to be knowledgeable on all areas politically and militarily. So,
Yeah.
Whether it's Israel and Iran or Taiwan and China, I mean, you pick your geopolitical conflict, Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
It's important that, because the propaganda machine is so strong, even that video of those children being published by NPR is serving a purpose. They're trying to put forth a narrative. So I think it's
Sure.
very important that Christians be sober minded. And I sent a message because I was talking with some friends about this last night, and just to show you how cynical I am on this stuff, I wrote this. I think it's very important for the future of America that Halliburton builds KFCs and Burger Kings in Iran. No KFCs built by Halliburton in Iran equals a threat to our democracy. If we can get Halliburton on the ground in Iran building Burger Kings, it will ensure peace in the region and freedom for Iranians. Our national security is threatened by a lack of Halliburton, Burger Kings, and KFCs. We must liberate the Iranians. And I'm cynical on this. I think many of my generation are cynical on this, because we've seen friends die. We've had friends die in these wars where it was funded in part by mega corporations for other interests besides, what we typically say is liberating. I saw somebody say that the Iranian people want to be liberated. We will be greeted as liberators. I'm like, how many times can they say this before people stop believing it? I mean,
Yeah.
sure, may there be people there. Are there Christians there who we want the best for and we want to thrive? We want Christianity to thrive in that nation. And is this the best way for Christianity to thrive there? I don't know. I don't know if they have nukes. I doubt it. Maybe they moved the weapons of mass destructions that were supposedly in Iraq to Iran, and so they have justified ground to go. So all this stuff, I think, like you said, as Christians, we've got to be grounded in God's word, and we've also got to be humble enough to go, I don't know. I have preferences and opinions. I have experience. We have experience as Americans in attempting these kinds of things. And so I think right now we have a lot of problems in our own country. We have a lot of problems. And I think that there are people in our own country who, you see the Iranian Ayatollah, whoever it may be, get up there and say death to America, and they chant this. And we've got people in our own country that are doing that in our streets. And I think that needs to be cleaned up. And so I think we have certain duties at home that we need to take care of, and that our focus should be on the homeland and should be on Americans more than it should be on foreign wars. Are there threats out there? Of course. Are there people who want America to cease to exist? Of course. And we should resist them in the strongest possible terms. And I'm confident with Trump. We've got a leader who is competent and has surrounded himself with competency, who can handle these things in a prudent manner. Does that mean I'm always going to agree with their measures? Absolutely not. There may be things that they do that I'm like, that's not good. I don't agree with that.
Right.
But really, I think our focus as Americans needs to be on America. I mean, this was kind of the core principle of America first. And you even saw Netanyahu get on some program yesterday where he was like saying, I didn't know America first meant like that America has to die or something. You know, and it's just it's a lot of propaganda, it's a lot of political maneuvering, and it's a lot of manipulations. And so Christians need to be sober minded. They really need to get rid of and throw off a lot of the dispensational theology. I have a great deal of sympathy for the Americans who are kind of stuck in that approach to international politics and eschatology, because there's so many of our brethren in the faith
Yeah.
who I believe are Christians are kind of stuck in that. So I want to help them. I just don't know how much they want to be helped sometimes because
Yeah.
they seem very, eager for this, whether it's a guy like Mike Huckabee or Lindsey Graham, these people who, some people call war hawks. That I don't think they have America's best interest in mind in these things. I think they have other agendas that are driving them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so good. And the dispensational thing is kind of very American grown and really predominant here. You go to other countries and it's not really like that. Some European countries, but most of them have different eschatological views. Outside of America, that's kind of the predominant view. But like you were saying too, all they have to do is trick one generation. When I was younger, I would read the Old Testament. I go, God would always be saying, remember this, remember when I brought you out of Egypt, remember when I did this for you, remember? And I go, Jesus, God really wants them to remember what he did for them. And then I realized when I got a little older, no, we're just such idiots and it's nothing new under the sun that people forget their history very quickly. And we see that happening in America to where just 20 years ago, I'm of the age now to where I'm the old man talking to the 22-year-old. Oh, well, I remember when, right? And you go, we just forget. So all you got to do is get one generation to think something, and you can kind of move that along. So I think, like God did in the Bible, don't forget. I think we have to do that with the Word of God as well too. Remember this, read this, don't forget that. But let's move on to our last subject. We'll put the bookends on it here just very quickly. Michael Tait's in the news, former lead singer of DC Talk, and I think he was the current lead singer of the Newsboys, two groups which I grew up with. When I was actually allowed to listen to contemporary Christian music. I grew up in a little more legalistic and drums are bad. And I was told by my pastor, I played a Keith Green song and he said, he's the head of contemporary Christian music. He's, that's devil music. And Keith Green is pretty vanilla, really, when you look at it. But I digress. So he had some issues going on. They were using drugs. There was some sexual assault allegations there. But this quote I want to read you just blew my mind. It said, this type of behavior wasn't unfamiliar to Philip. This is one of the victims, or the Christian music industry. According to multiple sources who have and currently tour in Christian music, this type of locker room behavior, often involving nudity, massage, beer, cigarettes, and in the case of skinny dipping, has frequented Christian music spheres of influence for decades. And it was a Nashville best kept secret, and I just went, huh. Yeah, I've been kind of saying that for a long time and no one listens. Everyone goes, "Oh, but these songs are taught, they say Jesus in them. They're great. They're being played on, whatever your local Christian radio station is." But when you really dig down deep, when you're looking at kind of the big cog machine of contemporary Christian music, and I'm not saying there aren't authentic ones out there that are great, that are God honoring, that love God with their whole heart and honor him in their action, speech, and mind and thought. But the greater cog of CCM, Christian contemporary music, does not differ that much from your secular pagan music industry. The same things are going on: cocaine use, getting drunk, smoking, lewd acts, all these things. And you go, we now have a spotlight on it. Have you had any experience, maybe either as a pastor or as just someone, as a public figure as well, to where you've had to speak out against CCM and kind of that industry and go, well, hold on, wait a minute, pump the brakes. Maybe everything they're doing and producing isn't as God honoring as we think.
Yeah, my conspiracy take for you on this podcast would be maybe
Okay.
maybe the fundamentalists were right. Maybe they
On
had a
some
point.
things, yeah.
And maybe they weren't just not wanting us to have fun. Maybe they were onto something. And so I've written in Fight Laugh Feast about contemporary Christian music and kind
Okay.
of its how it's been corrupted, or it was always corrupt. I mean, for me, the first domino to fall, and it was a pretty late domino, I'll be honest, was Amy Grant. You know, she's a
Yeah.
pretty famous one, or was in my day. And so I like you, I grew up listening to DC Talk and Jars of Clay. Really enjoyed their music. I led worship, you know, in high school, singing a lot of Jars of Clay. Um, and looking back, it's very confusing, you know, because I'll try to turn on their songs now. In fact, I just made a reference to Jesus Freak by DC Talk in one of my sermons. And the first time I played that in the car with my dad, he was like, "This is not Christian music." And you know, maybe he was right. I don't know. But I think that the thing I combat to in the critique of the contemporary Christian music industry, and it is an industry, it's motivated by profit and selling records, is
Sure.
that most of these people are not under the authority of a local church. Most of
Yes.
these people are disconnected from fellowship with Christians in a community, with a pastor that is responsible for their souls. They don't practice confession of sin. And so these kind of behaviors are going to run rampant. And so you could also, you know, this may be too far, but you could also make the same critique of many parachurch ministries, where
Yes.
a lot of people find their so-called Christian community outside the local church, whether it's in, you know, uh, ministries like Young Life or Navigators or Crew, or maybe they work for some, you know, mega parachurch ministry or something like that. And they view that as, well, I'm serving the Lord and I'm in ministry because I'm doing godly things. So they think, and maybe they are,
Yep.
and yet they're disconnected from the local body. And that's going to always lead to trouble in one's life. It's not going to help your soul, and it's going to produce a lot of ill effects. Now, in reality, we know that churches are not, somehow you come under the authority of a local pastor and you join a local church. That doesn't like remove temptation from your life, but
Right.
it does give you the means and the access to live a more disciplined, humble life, because you're living according to God's word. You're seeking to obey Him. You're being renewed. You're being fed the word. You're being shepherded. You're being known. I mean, unless you're going to a mega church where you're kind of ducking in, ducking out, and your affiliation is not really, you're not known there by a pastor, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it all comes down to, for a lot of these artists and musicians, is they're traveling all the time, sometimes world tours. They're not only disconnected from their local church, they're disconnected from family. And so whenever that happens, these kinds of things are invariably going to be knocking at the door. I'm deeply suspicious of any Christian artist nowadays. And you know, like you said, I'm sure there are genuine Christians in that industry. But as a whole, we've seen a track record at this point where that industry, the CCM particularly, has produced a lot of bad fruit,
Yeah.
bad fruit. And we shouldn't be squeamish to say, why is that? That's interesting. And I think it comes down to a lack of local church membership.
That is such a good take. I'm glad you said that, because I want every listener to truly understand that. If you look at, and it's just not artists, right? Like celebrity pastors recently, it can affect anyone. If you are not under the authority of a local body, your elders and your pastor, if they're not holding you accountable, if you're not confessing your sins corporately each week, I think it's very easy to give into your flesh and do what you want to do. It is very hard for me and members of my church, when I have a pastor on staff, maybe once every couple of weeks, come up to me and just go, "Greg, are you killing your sin? Are you leading your family correctly? How are you doing in business? Are you representing Christ in your business?" Right? And then every week getting on my knees and confessing my sin. It's very hard to to sneak around and do what my flesh wants to do when I have someone holding me accountable. Now, when you're on the road and you're an artist, 30 weeks out of the year, whatever, or whatever it is, I think your point is so valid. That's 9 out of 10 of these. When you see one of these people fall, you find out, oh, they were just an island unto themselves. They were a man without self-control. They were a city without walls. They had no accountability, not submitting to any type of authority. Because you got to remember, and look I came from a legalistic system to where you 100% submitted to authority and didn't question it. I'm not saying we go fundamentalist, right? We gave fundamentalists their flowers a few minutes ago. Now I'm going to pick on them again. But when you have to submit to authority, to godly authority, it humbles you. It takes away the pride a little bit of going, well, I know best. I'm making the right decisions. I can do what I want, right? So I think that kind of hierarchy that the Lord has set up in his word is very important. And I think you make a very good point. And I think most of these stories that we hear of people who are in the Christian circles, right, and then have this fall, I look at most of those, and I'm not going to sit here and name names and condemn people. It's already public. They weren't under any local body, local authority that could hold them accountable. And I think your point is very well made. And I think we will end it there with the Michael Tait stuff. But Chase, as we wrap this up, throw out the links, tell people where they can hear you, see you. We'll make sure we link it up, guys. If you're listening or watching, you can just click below, click right through, find Chase and his stuff. But just throw it out there and let people know what you got going on.
Yeah, I just started up on Substack. I'm going to start writing there more often. And so I'd love for people to go check out my work there. I've got a few articles and I'm going to have more coming out there. I'm also going to be kind of refreshing my website. But for now, you can find me writing as J. Chase Davis over on Substack. I put up kind of my thoughts on the Southern Baptist Convention as I was just there last week. So you can go find those there. I'm on X at J. Chase Davis. And you can keep up with me in those two places.
Awesome. Chase, thanks for taking time with us. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
All right, guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, find out more at dmwpodcast.com. Follow us on all socials. Tell a friend. That's how we grow. We appreciate you guys. I love getting those messages that say, hey, my buddy listens. He sent it to me. What do you think about this? I'm listening now. Appreciate it. Because remember, guys, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. Be sure to check us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the PubTV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuits.